guys, it's Jordan. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am super excited because we're going to be talking about Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. I just finished my reread of this book. I wanted to reread it to re-immerse myself in the world before I picked up Lord of Shadows. I need to talk about this book with somebody. My mom has not read this book yet, so I can't talk to her about it. So that leaves you guys. Probably gonna be a cross between like a book talk and a conspiracy theory video and just a what I want to see in Lord of Shadows video. It got really dark in here. I'm sorry. I'm filming this at 6:30 at night, which is really late for filming, but like I said, I had to talk to somebody about it. If you have not already read Lady Midnight, I probably wouldn't continue watching this video because you will probably be spoiled. Continue at your own risk. And the first thing that I want to talk about that made me want to make this video is the Blackthorn family tree, which I've become recently really intrigued by. Reading this book, you kind of get the sense that the Blackthorn family tree is cursed or has really unfortunate luck. We know that Annabelle was entombed alive because she fell in love with a downworlder at a time when that was illegal. Malcolm desperately wants to bring his loved one back from the dead, so he's trying to resurrect her. But it seems like there's been some issues with the Blackthorn family that go further back. One of my favorite things to do while I'm reading books, especially books like this, is to go onto Wikia and kind of like Google the characters and see their backstories and kind of like how they're connected and interrelate with other characters, because I tend to kind of forget some of the nuances of the relationships, especially because this is such a long series. I was looking at Jesse Blackthorn, who we like hear a little bit about in TID because he is the son of Tatiana Lightwood and Rupert Blackthorn, who are characters in TID. So I was reading this article on Jesse Blackthorn. Status of living was unknown, suspicious circumstances surrounding his death, that he was a really sickly child, he wasn't able to fight the sickness, and his mom was eventually told that he wouldn't survive past the age of 16 and he died. And then I remember reading that he marries Lucy Herondale. I was like really confused because I remember thinking, and it also lists unnamed children. Like, okay, so this kid got married at 16 to Lucy, which isn't really far-fetched because back in the 1800s, early 1900s, that wasn't totally uncommon. And I could see them having like one kid. For them to have multiple children, I did some digging, and I have not read the Bane Chronicles, so I think this is mentioned and explored more in the Bane Chronicles. And I don't know if this is like a common thing that people know about the Shadowhunter world and the Blackthorn family, because I've never heard anybody talk about this ever, but I feel like this is really prudent to the storyline of Lady Midnight. Jesse Blackthorn's mom, Tatiana, was so distraught when he died that she sought out the help of Magnus Bane to resurrect her son from the dead. What? What is with the Blackthorn family and bringing people back from the dead? Why are they all obsessed with necromancy? What I did, because I'm crazy and, you know, I just need answers. I pulled out the dust jacket of Clockwork Princess. Now, I bought this in 2013, and I have never noticed this in the 4 years that I've looked at this stupid family tree. But next to Jesse Blackthorn's name is an asterisk. I've literally never noticed that before. I've looked at this a billion times. There's no like legend anywhere on here as to what the asterisk means. Wonder why that's there. I'm looking at the dates of when Lucy Herondale and Jesse Blackthorn were born. Jesse was born in 1879 and Lucy was born in 1891. Okay, so they are 12 years apart. That means that when Jesse was 16, Lucy was only 4. They sure as hell weren't getting married and having kids at that point, which means that if he was deceased for like 9 years, then Lucy would have been 15 when he was resurrected, and they could have met. He would have been 16, she would have been 15, and they could have grown up together. I was shook. There were light bulbs going off everywhere. I was like, holy shit. I never noticed this before, that the birthdays were so far apart, which also makes sense because Tatiana is pregnant with Jesse in this series, and Will and Tessa definitely aren't having kids anytime in the near future when this series ends. I was livid. That spawns off a whole nother, like, thought direction that my brain went down. I have watched Emma from Emma Books's video of Lord of Shadows conspiracy theories, and she had mentioned that because the Blackthorns and the Herondales had married, Lucy was the daughter of Tessa Gray, who is a half warlock. We know that her brother James has certain abilities associated with the demon blood. Apparently, on Lucy's Wikia page, if you look that up, it mentions that she also has some unexplained powers as a result of her mother's heritage. She marries into the Blackthorn family, which means that the Blackthorn family that we see in Lady Midnight are descendants of her, which means that the demon blood has trickled down through the centuries. I don't really know how potent it would be at this point. That makes you wonder if that's why Julian has like this dark, sinister side to him, if he is affected more by this demon blood, or if his siblings have any demon blood, or if they are going to have any like weird, crazy powers because they have an ancestor with demon blood. I feel like it's a double whammy on the family, because not only did Lucy have demon blood from her mom, but she also married a kid that was resurrected from the dead. When I found out that Jesse was resurrected, I mean, not like explicitly stated that he was, but he had to have been, because this family tree says that he died in 1938. Last I checked, 1938 is not 16 years after 1879. He had to have come back from the dead. I mean, there's even a story in the Bane Chronicles about her going to Magnus and speaking about how upset she was over Jesse's death. I'm very curious about how this will play out in Lord of Shadows, if we have any more information about this in Lord of Shadows, which also explains why this series is so well intertwined with The Last Hours. Jesse and Lucy are main characters in The Lost Hours. Does that mean, so if James Herondale can turn into shadows and has demon blood as well, that the Herondale line that is descended from him also has any kind of demon-esque qualities? The demon blood would affect Lucy's line, has to also affect James's line as well. And we know James has abilities. Or was it the fact that Jesse was resurrected from the dead that damned the Blackthorn line? Because Arthur says in Lady Midnight that the Blackthorn family line is damned. So let's talk about Annabelle, because we'd mentioned briefly that she is trying to be resurrected from the dead. Part of the resurrection process was that he needed to have 12 hands of murderers and severed their hands to make the Hands of Glory candelabra, which is the creepiest thing ever. Does that mean that Tatiana also had to create 12 murderers? I would assume that they used the same spell. I'm assuming that there's not more than one resurrection spells, which means she also had to sacrifice Blackthorn blood in order to bring Jesse back. So who did she kill? What Blackthorn family member did she kill to bring Jesse back? She also needed Blackthorn blood. And we know that none of the Blackthorns at the end of the book died. I mean, do they just need to be cut in blood? I don't even think that she mentioned that any of them were bleeding. Some loophole with Emma is connected to Julian, that Emma's blood caused the spell to be completed. Is it only partially completed and that's why she's just like awake? Is she like fully awake and like functioning and moving, or is she just like partially awake? Also, a lot of people, I think, are under the impression that Malcolm's not dead. There was no body. He was just sinking to the bottoms of the ocean, and then black smoke came up and took him. But all of his spells dissolved, like the protections around the Rook House and creation of the cave at the convergence site. Another like big thing is Cortana. It's mentioned in the book that Emma's sword, which is made by Waylon Smith, can cut through anything. We see her use it to cut through the bonds that held Tavi to the table at the end of the book. So a lot of people are wondering if the sword could be used to somehow cut the parabatai bond between her and Julian. I think a lot of people have an issue because the parabatai bond is like intangible thing. Like there's nothing actually there for them to cut. You can't just cut off the rune necessarily. Like that would be kind of, I guess, lame to like flay their skin. But Emma also mentions that when she's coming back from the convergence site after the big battle and she puts Cortana back in its sheath, she could feel the sword humming with energy. She wondered if it had absorbed magic from Malcolm, because when she went to go stab Malcolm with the sword, it hit the black book which was inside of his jacket, and it sent like an electric shock up her arm and caused her arm to be like, feel like it was on fire and it was burning. It actually burned her flesh, and it caused a really strange reaction with her endurance rune, caused it to like glow in a weird way, and when she put up her arm to block a spell from Malcolm, the spell rebounded. So it seems like when she plunged the sword into the black book, some magic, some energy, something was absorbed into the sword, and then by extension her arm. So maybe it's not just that this sword is made by Waylon and Smith, because we have seen other swords in the series made by them as well, and it doesn't seem unique enough to be something that can cut the parabatai bond. But maybe the fact that it's made by Waylon and Smith and that it has this humming thrum of energy because it hit the black book is enough to make it unique enough to cut the parabatai bond. So maybe if she were to stab the rune or try to cut the rune off their skin or something with this magic energy that is held within Cortana, that would be enough to sever the parasite bond. There is something unique about Cortana, and it's going to play some kind of role somewhere. It has to. It's mentioned too often. I just don't know if it's going to be what cuts the parasite bond. It's even mentioned in this book that Christina wishes that Emma could be her parasite and vice versa. So if we could solve the issue of Julian and Emma being parasite and then give Christina to Emma and make them parasite instead, that would be the ultimate solution. Maybe one of them will have to die and be resurrected, because it seems that Blackthorns like to do this. So maybe we have to kill Julian. That way the bond would be severed and then we can bring Julian back to life. My camera died, so now we're on my phone. I just feel like unless we figure out a solution with Cortana, the only way to really sever the bond is if one of them dies. The last book was like Queen of Air and Darkness. You know, we already know who Lady Midnight is. We know that Lady Midnight is a person. We know that it is Annabelle Blackthorn. It would make sense if the Lord of Shadows is another Blackthorn, and then the Queen of Air and Darkness is yet another Blackthorn, or someone really closely connected to the Blackthorns. Lord of Shadows to me sounds like it should be James Herondale. He can manipulate shadows, he can mold himself into one and like travel through them, so I feel like James Herondale should be the Lord of Shadows. And his sister is Lucy, and she marries a Blackthorn, so he has a pretty decent connection to the Blackthorn family. And I feel like he's really the best candidate to be Lord of Shadows. People think it's going to be Julian, but unless Julian can turn into a shadow, I just feel like James is a really obvious choice. I'm also really excited to see how Kit is moving forward. We learned that he is a part of the Lost Herondale line. That's going to obviously bring Clary and Jace back into the fold somehow. How he's going to accept this life of being a Shadowhunter after being raised by his father to hate everything Shadowhunter related. I was pretty shocked found out that he was a Herondale, because it was out of left field for me. I didn't even see it coming. So let's talk about Anselm Nightshade. Nightshade is a known Shadowhunter name, the maiden name of Clary's grandmother. So Adele Anselm, like, he's a really old vampire. I don't know how old. I don't know if it's confirmed anywhere when he was born. Parents often name their kids like with the same first letter. So are they siblings? Was he born? It doesn't seem like that's old enough for him to just be Adele's brother. The Shadowhunter community is a very small community, so for people to have the same last name and not be related is like ridiculous to even think of. So Anselm Nightshade has to somehow be related to Adele Nightshade, which is Clary's grandma, which means that he's a Shadowhunter turned downworlder. I feel like there's going to be something that comes up with Christina and her past and Diego and whatever happened with them, and then obviously Jaime has some kind of like dark, uncaring, uncompassionate side. We don't ever meet Jaime, so I feel like we have to meet Jaime at some point. So is he going to come to Los Angeles? Are they going to go to, I don't think they're going to go to Mexico, but I feel like that's going to play some significant role with Christina's storyline. And then we have Diana, who was keeping secrets out the wazoo. Something happened in Thailand with her brother, and she won't live at the institute with them because why? Learned that Agnes and Alec have 2 children now. They have a Shadowhunter child who's 5 years old, which is another thing that I'm very curious to learn more about, because he's a 5-year-old Shadowhunter child who is orphaned as a result of the Dark War. His family is from Buenos Aires. I'm wondering what his family lineage is, what family he's a part of, if it has any connection to any of the other Shadowhunters in our world. We don't know of any other Shadowhunters from South America. Who could that possibly bring into the fold? And also, this I don't know if it has any significance, but on page 157, we meet Magnus. Magnus comes to the LA Institute, talks about Jocelyn and Luke's wedding and how he remembers seeing Julian and Emma there. And Magnus is like, though it wasn't the last wedding I saw you at, was it? And Emma and Julian were kind of puzzled and confused, and they're like, I'm pretty sure it was. What other wedding would it have been? And Magnus is like, perhaps my memory is going in my old age. What does that possibly mean? We don't know of any other wedding that Julian and Emma would have attended with the characters from TMI. So what is Magnus possibly thinking that, like, what is he confusing? Or has something happened and their memory is potentially altered in some way? Is it like some kind of like premonition that Magnus is seeing? I feel like those kinds of things aren't just slipped in there for shits and giggles. Ooh, also, I feel like this is going to play into the Cortana. This is going to play into that somehow. It's on page 311. Emma is talking to Christina about how wonderful Jace and Clary are and how they're like these magical superhero, like these magical Shadowhunters that have this special blood. Christina says, I heard about you. Everyone said you would be the next Jace Herondale, the next great Shadowhunter warrior. And Emma says, I'm not going to be that. I'm not special, Christina. I don't have extra angel blood or special powers. I'm an ordinary Shadowhunter. And Christina says, you are not ordinary. Is that foreshadowing that Emma potentially has some special abilities that we're not aware of, or will be gaining abilities that we're not aware of? It sounds like they're trying to force this idea that she is a normal Shadowhunter. She's not special, but clearly somehow she is. Will it be because of what happened at the end of the book, Volume of the Dead, and the magic being taken into Cortana and rune on her arm? Like, does that all have to do with her gaining special abilities? Will that be somehow tied into how they break the parabatai bond? So I think those are all the thoughts that I have on Lady Midnight by Cassandra Clare. Love to discuss Lady Midnight with you in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I will talk to you very soon. Bye!